The Vorthak archive hummed with the quiet efficiency of millennia-old technology, its crystalline data cores storing the complete history of what was once the galaxy's most dominant empire. Dr. Elena Vasquez ran her fingers along the ancient interface, watching as holographic displays materialized before her, casting blue light across her weathered face. "Fascinating," she murmured, her translation implants working overtime to decode the alien script. They really did think we wouldn't last. The records were clear. 2,000 years ago, when the Vorthak Empire first encountered humanity, their xenobiologists had performed extensive studies. The conclusion, documented in excruciating detail, was unanimous. Homo sapiens was a temporary species, too violent, too chaotic, too self-destructive to persist beyond a few hundred years. Elena smiled grimly as she read their analysis. The Vorthak had been masters of biological engineering, capable of extending their own lifespans to tens of thousands of years. They had ruled over 47 star systems with cold efficiency, their society a perfect machine of logic and order. To them, humanity's tendency toward war, their emotional volatility, their stubborn refusal to accept unified governance, were all symptoms of an evolutionary dead end. The first contact protocols were telling. The Vorthak had established preservation zones around human colonies, treating them like endangered animals in a cosmic zoo. They documented human behavior with scientific detachment, waiting for the inevitable collapse. Some of their researchers had even placed bets on how long it would take. The longest estimate was 500 years. Elena pulled up another file, this one dating from 3 centuries after first contact. The Vorthak tone had shifted from amused condescension to mild confusion. Humanity hadn't collapsed. Instead, they had spread to new worlds, adapted to impossible environments, and somehow maintained their chaotic diversity while building increasingly sophisticated technologies. Subject species continues to exhibit paradoxical survival patterns, read one report. Despite ongoing internal conflicts and lack of centralized authority, expansion continues at unprecedented rates. Recommend continued observation. The scientist in Elena appreciated the Vorthak methodology, even as she bristled at their arrogance. They had documented everything. The Great War of the Outer Rim that had consumed 3 human colonies, the terraform rebellion that split the species across ideological lines, the plague years when entire worlds went dark. Each crisis should have been humanity's last, according to Vorthak projections. But humans had a way of surprising people. Elena accessed the military archives next, her security clearance allowing her into the deeper records. Here, the Vorthak perspective grew more troubled. They had watched as humans developed technologies that shouldn't have been possible with their limited lifespans, and fractured societies, faster-than-light communication networks that spanned dozens of worlds, adaptive AI systems that evolved alongside their creators, weapons that could crack planets. The turning point came during the Void War, 800 years after first contact. The Devourers had emerged from dark space, consuming entire star systems with their biomechanical swarms. The Vorthak, for all their technological superiority, found themselves overwhelmed. Their rigid hierarchies couldn't adapt fast enough. Their long-lived leaders moved too slowly. Humanity responded in typical fashion, with beautiful, terrifying chaos. Elena found footage from the Battle of Kepler 442, where a human fleet had engaged a Devourer hive ship, using nothing but improvised weapons and sheer audacity. She watched as Captain Maria Santos, great-grandmother to Elena's own grandmother, had ordered her ship to ram directly into the alien vessel's core. The explosion had taken out half the Devourer fleet. The Vorthak had been forced to request human assistance. Addendum to previous assessments, read a hastily filed report from that era. Subject species demonstrates unexpected utility in crisis scenarios. Recommend formal alliance protocols. The alliance had saved them all, but it had also marked the beginning of the end for Vorthak dominance. Humans didn't just fight the Devourers. They studied them, adapted their technology, turned their own weapons against them. Where the Vorthak saw only destruction to be contained, humans saw problems to be solved through creative destruction. Elena scrolled through the final centuries of records, watching the slow decline of the Vorthak Empire. It wasn't conquest or war that ended them. It was simple demographics. Their perfect society had bred out risk-taking, curiosity, the very chaos that drove innovation. Their population aged and stagnated while humans continued to evolve, adapt, and spread. The last official Vorthak report was filed just 50 years ago, as their final world joined the Human Federation. The author, historian Prime Zethkar, had written with what Elena recognized as grudging respect. We believed longevity was strength, that order was survival. We were wrong. The temporary species endures because they embrace change itself. They do not fear death because they have learned to outlive it through their children, their ideas, their impossible dreams. We called them temporary because we could not see that permanence itself is temporary. Only change endures. Elena leaned back in her chair, looking out through the archive's transparent walls at the bustling human city that had grown around the ancient Vorthak structures. Children played in parks built among thousand-year-old monuments. Students from a dozen different human subspecies, some adapted for high gravity, others for the void between stars, shared classes in universities that taught both human innovation and Vorthak wisdom. The irony wasn't lost on her. In trying to preserve humanity as a curiosity, the Vorthak had helped ensure their survival. The temporary species had not only outlasted their observers, but had absorbed them, learned from them, and ultimately transcended them. Her communication device chimed. A message from the archaeological team on Vorthak Prime. They had found another archive, this one containing genetic samples from hundreds of species the Vorthak had studied over their long history. Most were indeed extinct now, victims of their own stability or the changing galaxy, but in their meticulous records those species lived on, and humans, the great adapters, the beautiful chaos makers, would ensure they were remembered. Elena smiled and began composing her report. After all, someone needed to document the documentarians. The temporary species had work to do,